So welcome back, and welcome to our final plenary session. We will have Slido available again for people participating from home or just those shy people who don't want to raise their hand and ask for the microphone. And then we got the roving mic for question and answer later on if you do. Okay, so it is my pleasure to introduce the host of our final plenary session. I'm talking a little bit slowly so that people can get settled in. So our host is no stranger to organizing groups of diverse stakeholders. She's the Director of Equity and Tribal Affairs at the headquarters in Caltrans headquarters. And she said I'm allowed to do this because she has an eminently announceable name. Please help me welcome Naila Pope Harden.
I thought he was joking when I said, yeah, sure, do it. That'll be fun. Hello, everyone. My name is Naila Pope Harden, as you just heard. I am the Deputy Director of Equity and Tribal Affairs at Caltrans. I am really excited today to be talking about engagement. This panel is not at all about me, but I got my start doing transportation work about 20 years ago when I was on my way to school and a bus stop had a sign that said this bus service is cut, and I said, well, I need to get to school. I became a community organizer from there, did community organizing, had to learn transportation budgets, got into advocacy, ran a statewide coalition that focused on transportation and land use, and now I'm at Caltrans in the government. So I've been on the community side, I've been in advocacy, and now I'm in state government. And I just personally, my belief is just like, let's put all the voices. Let's get all the voices in a room, all the voices on the table. We're just always gonna make better products. I'm very excited about this about this panel today. We have 4 amazing panelists that are gonna talk about their experience, their work. We're gonna be asking some questions. You all may have an opportunity to ask questions depending on how long the panel goes. So let's start thinking of good questions that we can use to engage and advance our ideas around engagement. First person that I am bringing up is, I'm just gonna take a little bit of liberty because when I was in advocacy, one of the people I got to meet was Vice Chair Falcone, who I'm about to invite up. And as someone in advocacy interacting with government, Vice Chair Falcone was such a breath of fresh air in just listening and wanting to make sure the communities were at the table, amplifying voices, just listening. And so first person I'm going to invite up is Commissioner Falcone.
Well, good afternoon again. Are you all awake now? Yeah, okay. All right, well, this is the very last session, and so we got to look alive, right? And I will try my best to keep y'all awake. It is such a pleasure to be in this position and representing all of you at the California Transportation Commission. This is now my 4th year, believe it or not, and I must say I have learned tremendously about not only about transportation, about processes. I am kind of a political person, and so that I kind of got already jumping into this position. My background, just really quick, is I worked 14 years in the state legislature for the state assembly and for the state senate. My final stint with the Senate was as a deputy chief of staff, working for someone that worked on the state budget, and so I understood for the most part how the budget process works, but really distilling it into the transportation realm was kind of mind-blowing when I walked into this position. And I have to say, I have met some of the best people, I admit, in my 14-year career in the state legislature working in the space. And so I just want to, really lift up that these communities that you all represent is been active and engaging and so educational, and I really want to thank you all for really making this, such an enriching space to work in California. After that, I started my own. I was crazy enough to start my own lobbying firm, and I've been doing that for the past 15 years as a small business owner, and so I have a special place in my heart for small business folks. And I say this in context as what we're going to be talking about in active transportation, because I do truly believe that there is economic development opportunities. We had just heard from Dr. Adonia Lugo about really how do we, really think about the value of active transportation and other modes of transportation in stimulating dollars and jobs in this state, right? And so, in this position, as commissioner, we hear a lot about technical things, costs, funding, designs and corridor schematics, metrics, targets, legislative and governor's direction and policy. We hear about the alphabet soup of funding, right? And trying to get folks to understand what all that funding does and the guidelines that come into play as all of you and your partners throughout the region and throughout the state bring forth to us really worthy projects for us to consider funding. But anybody that knows me in the commission knows that my brand on the commission is about how do you put the human face on the things that we do. And, we think highways and even, bikes, cars, all the types of modes and devices to get people moving from A to B. And what we fail sometimes in some of our work when we get to the part where we're at the end of the process and we're looking at funding is what is the human face, what is the impact of the community and the people that live in it in the decisions that we make. And so with that, I had to think about when we're doing this panel, my inspiration. And my inspiration is meet Carol. Carol is from my community in Bonita, in a small little township very close to downtown San Diego, only 15 minutes north of the California-Mexico border in San Diego. And Carol is somebody that I knew when I was a little girl, about 11 years old, in Bonita. And she is probably approaching 90 years old in this picture, but I've known her. She was, before after-school programs was a trend, she was operating her own little after-school program for latchkey kids, including myself, at her home. And I told my kids about her, and I said, look, kids, look at Carol. This is a woman that bikes all over Bonita with grocery bags, with her mail, and she looks like she's very determined on this photo, but she always has a flower in her hair. And she became my inspiration for this talk because it really shows that different people are using different modes of transportation. This is her primary mode of transportation in Bonita. But if you notice, what do you notice about this photo? Where is she riding? On the sidewalk. And that's because in Bonita, even though we have a very active bike culture in Bonita, is that the bike infrastructure does not feel safe. It's typical, I guess it's class 2 bike lane, not protected, and folks are barreling through Bonita Road. And it's screaming for some sort of kind of traffic slowing mechanism or approach. And it really spoke to me about the challenges of not only Bonita, but other communities that supposedly have bike lanes, but people don't feel empowered to use them. And so as we're looking at projects to fund, we think about, okay, are people going to really use them? And the answer is, for somebody like Carol, yes, and there would be more of her using this infrastructure. So I wanted to share with you, because we're going to be doing some show and tell, and there's been show and tell throughout the last 2 days of really cool projects. And I wanted to share with you one of the most robust of these projects, and that is the San Diego Bayshore Bikeway. And I thought it was a really interesting case study of multi-jurisdictional, multi-authority, and all the different players and political will it took in order to get this project, well, it's not even completed. It's continuing to be constructed. And believe it or not, and I talked to the champion of this project, Supervisor Greg Cox, who was a supervisor of the County of San Diego for 25 years. And he was telling me, because he was the champion of this project and really kept this moving and ensuring that Sandag and all the partners, all the cities, Caltrans, MTS, the Fish and Wildlife Service, the Navy, all were working and working together to try to get this project from concept to actual fruition. And it's not even done yet. And believe it or not, this project started in the 1980s. You think it's really hard to get a freeway project built? 24 miles of a bikeway project, right? It has taken decades, and it's still not completed yet. It has been a very complex project. 5 jurisdictions: San Diego, Chula Vista, National City, Imperial Beach, and Coronado. 4 of the 5 of those cities, at least in those communities, are underserved and experienced a recreational desert, park desert. And so this area was screaming for something, right? Before we thought and conceived of the Bayshore Bikeway, the corridor was mostly railway. The San Diego, Arizona Eastern Railway was operating on the corridor that is now along the bikeway. And so that corridor, that railway was retired, and it provided an opportunity to rethink of how we can connect communities through a Bayshore Bikeway project. So you're looking at here, actually, is the Bikeway Village, and on the Imperial Beach section. I wanted to kind of hone in on that because, interestingly enough, when that section was completed, it opened up opportunities for a actual bikeway village that included a bike shop. I think it was Rad Bikes, that's there right now. A really cool brewery called Novo Brazil. And also there's an event space, a beautiful event space that's open for high school activation. They do their homecoming and proms. And so it's a beautiful backdrop for events, and it is done really, really well. I think there's also a coffee shop there, and so it's a great stop for folks using the bikeway to just stop and kind of have a cup of coffee or a really nice meal. This is the section in Chula Vista in the new Gaylord Pacific Resort that was just completed in May, and that's a 1,200, I think, room hotel in Chula Vista. It is the biggest hotel project in California that was just completed most recently. And they at the Gaylord Resort has actually really promoted through a bike rental concept, really trying to encourage their convention visitors to use the Bayshore Bikeway as kind of part of this ecosystem package, and really making their resort, enriching the attractive amenities that their resort has to offer. And so this is the Chula Vista segment, and you see an aerial. My colleague was kind enough to use her drone to kind of take some aerial photos. And this is her and her family actually using the National City segment. And National City has been a particularly impacted community as it relates to congestion and pollution through the confluence of the 5 and the 54 freeway, and then you have the Navy that is right in National City, and so it really, during the peak hours, is impacted in that community with air quality issues, and so we, and I'm happy to say that the CTC and Caltrans have done a really focused job in trying to fund projects that help National City complete their segment of the Bayshore Bikeway, and we still have still more to go in the Logan area, Barrio Logan area in San Diego. And so a really cool connection to the Bayshore Bikeway is the segment from San Ysidro, which is one of the busiest border crossings in the entire world, from San Ysidro connecting to the Imperial Beach segment of the Bayshore Bikeway. And so if you talk about the complexity of all the jurisdictions I mentioned about, and I didn't even include all of them, including Coastal Commission and the Port of San Diego, is the binational stakeholders that were involved in creating this concept of a border to Bayshore bikeway, and SANDAG has worked really hard, and CTC has helped contribute to this project as well. And it's, we're talking about folks that don't typically, even though they live in San Diego, don't typically have access to the water, right? And so it's not only connecting people to their jobs and people to people, but also the people to the natural amenities that San Diego has to offer. And so, I'm on the CTC, and so we talk a lot about funding, and we've been talking about the challenges of and opportunities of getting ATP projects come to fruition. And I have to say that the regions and the local local jurisdictions have answered the call to bring forth projects, and I've done it. The last cycle, cycle 7, projects in the tune of about $2.5 billion were requested of the ATP program in the last cycle. And we try to kind of illustrate this funnel, right? That there's all these applications, but we have such a small funding pool, at least for this dedicated ATP funding program. And so the continuing challenge, and we've heard it throughout the last couple days, is how do we utilize and leverage other funding programs to help buttress our ATP program so that we can fund really cool projects like the Bayshore Bikeway. It doesn't have to be as extensive as a 24 or 6.5 mile project. Even a small project, continuing a sidewalk or widening a sidewalk for safe routes to schools is going to be almost just as impactful for a community, right? But this is the challenge. And what I've been really interested, especially being in the commission, is how we work all together, all of our funding partners, all of our regional and local partners, in finding and our advocates and community-based organizations. And I was going to point out that one of mine in San Diego, Carlisle, is here from Circulate San Diego, and I'm a board member of Circulate San Diego. And how do we all work together to help the public really imagine other ways of getting from A to B, right? In a healthier, more environmentally, and what are the economic opportunities that we can think of that can align with what we're doing with ATP. So with that, I talk too much, but I appreciate your attention and being here. So thank you.
All right, so I told you all I was a community organizer. I did that for about 10 years, and a large part of that was through churches. I come out of Pentecostal church. Anyone familiar with the Pentecostal church? We're loud, we hoot and holler, okay? So we're gonna bring a little bit of that energy in here, okay? So while folks are presenting, feel free to validate what they're saying if they say something that you feel validated by, right? There are a lot of points in there where I think I have a Miss Carol. Who in here has a Miss Carol that they think about when they do this work? Okay, let's shout out their names. Who's your person? Mine's Miss Towns. Shout them out. All right. Anyone else? Oh, come on, don't be shy. Who are we doing this for? Name them. Gregory. All right. Shout out to Gregory. I hope we get active transportation for Gregory. All right. Okay, y'all are going to make me work for this, but I don't mind. I get paid till 5, so I'll work. So thank you for that, Commissioner Falcone. I think that's beautiful. And also, to the Bayshore Bikeway, how imaginative, right? How, I think one of the things that's beautiful about active transportation for me is how minimal it is in terms of like geography or scope, but the impact and change is just so big. And so I feel inspired by what you said around just thinking of how we be more imaginative about spaces that have been disregarded. Next person that I am inviting up is going to be Madeline. Did I do that out of order? Okay, sorry. I accidentally left my phone up here while Commissioner Falcone was talking, so I couldn't get my thoughts. Madeline's gonna come up. Madeline is out of District 5 at Caltrans. Completely inspired by the work that District 5 is doing in engagement. In my office, we lead some of the engagement work happening at Caltrans, and we're always modeling like, okay, well, what is District 5 doing? Let's talk to District 5, see what they're doing on the ground. So, Madeline. Remember, give the energy, let's validate.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, my name is Madeline Jacobson. I'm a senior transportation planner with Caltrans, but in my day-to-day job now, I work in project management as a Caltrans PM. And I have the privilege to share with you the story of the Los Alamos Connected Community Project along State Route 135, which is in our district. And I was involved in the planning end in developing the grant application, and I'm now serving as the project manager to implement this project. So I'm excited to get started, but first, Lee, I want to acknowledge and appreciate the collaboration with the County of Santa Barbara, and notably our MPO in this region is the SBCAG, or the Santa Barbara Association of Governments. This project also includes a significant partnership with the Orchid Unified School District and their Olga Reed Elementary School. And when developing the application, we also had a lot of other parties that really played key roles in supporting us in doing some of the engagement that we did in the later stages. So this project really began and was rooted with an identified need along State Route 135, which the local community refers to as Bell Street. And Caltrans saw an opportunity to address the need that we were hearing about through the ATP program, since we didn't have the means to deliver this project through our traditional methods. And so, like many of you, I'm sure, we applied in cycle 4, cycle 5, and then we were funded in cycle 6. So it took many opportunities. So keep going. So State Route 135, to give you a little sense of the space, it is the main street along the community corridor. This is largely what one snapshot of one end of the corridor is. And going further, you can see all of the essential services and businesses located there. Notably, the post office in Los Alamos is a critical resource because at the time we're developing the application, we heard from community members that they didn't have actual post boxes at their address. They depended on the P.O. boxes at the post office, which was located on State Route 135. And you can see some people crossing one of the crosswalks there. But we also had the health center, mobile home park connectivity along the corridor. The community park is located there. And then Going down Centennial Street is the local elementary school that I mentioned as a project partner. So this project that I'm talking with you about, while Caltrans did the application, the project was really developed and defined and had its beginning through the County of Santa Barbara and some of the planning efforts that the county had led. And so in 2011 was the publication of the Los Alamos Community Plan. And then in 2015, the Los Alamos Pedestrian Circulation and Parking Plan. And these planning documents identified the need and sort of the vision for what Los Alamos could look like. And then in the active transportation realm, the Regional Active Transportation Plan through SBCAG, and at the time, Caltrans was developing our district active transportation plans. These all presented and pushed for the need to address these bike and pedestrian gaps. But in the ATP program, it wasn't enough for us to depend on the engagement done through these planning efforts that were at a bigger scale. And so we did some very project-specific engagement through each of those grant cycles that I'll talk about next. So 2018, this was the first year that the district applied in cycle 4, and we conducted a community survey that was done utilizing the post office and putting little postcards in the individual mailboxes to gather information and really understand the existing walking and biking trends in the community and what community members felt would help them feel encouraged to walk and bike in their community. And then we were unsuccessful in cycle 4, but we took the feedback. We applied again in cycle 5, which in cycle 5, this overlapped with the COVID-19 pandemic. And so our engagement this grant cycle was entirely online, and it was conducted through a SurveyMonkey effort that was promoted. And you can see that we reached over 200 community members, which in the population size of Los Alamos is more than 10% of the community. So this continued to help us hear from community members what improvements they thought would help them feel more comfortable walking and biking. And it was a valuable tool and resource for us in continuing to push for this grant application to demonstrate the need for the project and its alignment with the community's interests and needs. But we didn't get funded in cycle 5 either. So we applied again in 2022, and I joined the district in 2021. So this was the first time that I was involved in the project. And we didn't want to do another community-wide broad survey. And so we decided to focus our efforts in reaching vulnerable road users through tabling at the school and the school district, and then through conducting a presentation and a walk audit with the senior center, which was one of those businesses or buildings that you saw along State Route 135. And so I'll talk about each of these things next. So actually, I realized I didn't have separate slides because we wanted to condense our presentation. So I'm going to go, oops, I'm going the wrong direction. Backwards, oops. I'm going to go on this one. So I'll talk about them here. So one of the things that we did through the Senior Center presentation and walk audit is we provided a presentation to the members of the Senior Center on what we were doing and what we're proposing in the project. And then we utilized the street safety and appeal checklist through AARP to conduct a simplified walk audit with them down a couple blocks of Los Alamos along Bell Street. And so that's a picture from the Senior Center. And one of the things at the school that we did is we brought a map of the project. We did this at every event that we brought through the community. And we spoke with parents and students during the pickup period at the end of the day, so they had more time to discuss with us. And we talked with the youth about sort of comparing pictures, what would they feel more comfortable doing versus less comfortable doing. And we had an opportunity to engage with them in a way that we wouldn't otherwise have had if we did a general community-wide survey. And then the map tool, I encourage you, it wasn't very complex. It was a sort of simple printout that we took notes on, and we decided to use this as a really good and sort of simplified thing that we had to develop for the ATP application anyways, that we could use as a tool for talking about the project with community members. And so, yeah, here's a couple pictures and snapshots from that time. And so to get to what we really heard is we heard throughout the development of this project a desire to support vulnerable road users and the senior community and youth. We consistently heard a need to fill the gaps in the sidewalk network, more so, I think, than the bike network. But there was a strong story, and that's just one example of a barrier that exists today. And then in every public meeting, continuing into project development in the current stages of the project, a desire to slow speeds, which is not something that you can do through mere signage. And so it's the design of the project that is intended to help slow the speeds through the community. And then Los Alamos has a historic old days celebration. It has a lot of community history and pride that we also always heard the message, don't change the nature of this community. And this is one of the factors why this project does not include green paint striping for the bike lanes. It maintains a regular bike lane striping because they didn't want to see that in their community. So, a few lessons learned and experiences. The first one there is build from larger planning efforts. And so it was important, Caltrans District 5 serves 5 counties, that we didn't take a top-down approach and say, we see this need and we're gonna do it. It was something that came out of the community planning effort, and then we built from there. Partner with your key stakeholders to expand your reach. I think I shared this through the couple examples with the school district and the senior center. They were key parties in our engagement, but not only the engagement, but helping define the scope and move the project forward. Additionally, I didn't cover it in much of this presentation, but this project has a non-infrastructure component, and the local bicycle coalition served a really critical role in helping us figure out what scope we were putting forward to deliver. And that'll be the first time that Caltrans does non-infrastructure. So check in with me in 2027 afterwards. And then utilize tools that exist to enhance your engagement, because in our case, we didn't have necessarily a ton of resources to invent something new. And so we really used the existing checklist, and perhaps you went to the Counts Plus training, and sort of there's these other tools that are out there in the community transportation world to help you gather the data that you might want to present and talk about. And then lastly, and very important, if unsuccessful, always try again, because commission staff, I think, provided us really critical input to help our application evolve. But not only that, every cycle we did additional engagement, and we got to hear and work with different populations who we maybe didn't hear from the time before. And today, I'm the project manager in the capital side of things, and so I continue to have an opportunity to interface with the people who we worked with in developing the application, which has been really, really cool. So, continuing to today, the project just completed its environmental document last year. We're continuing, woohoo, yeah. One of the partners who helped support our application ended up hosting our public meeting space for the public meeting that we did. And they've all been continued partners in helping us develop this project and work to deliver it. There will be challenges working for the department within a constrained budget, unlike a program that we deliver a lot of projects through. And so that'll be something that we figure out. But we're looking forward to future engagement around some design aesthetics to the extent that we can incorporate feedback and input as to what things look like in the end. And then coming soon, in parallel with construction, will be the non-infrastructure component. So that's my contact information, and I appreciate the chance to share this story with you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. I think Madeline, what I'm taking away from your presentation is the inspiration of just try again, try many ways, try different times, be it the ATP application itself, be it the community engagement efforts. We just keep trying. So thank you for that. All right, next person I'm inviting up is gonna be Mike Wilson. We're gonna read this quick bio. Bios are just so difficult. I always wanna just like stop on bios and be like, oh, tell me more about that, but we are on a tight time crunch. But Mike Wilson is the senior safety engineer at Cal OSHA, who previously worked for 13 years as a paramedic EMT firefighter in Santa Cruz County and the city of Salinas. I know, right? We're all intrigued. We wanna know, but we're not here for that. He is a commissioner on the City of Berkeley's Disaster and Fire Safety Commission, where he worked with Berkeley's fire chief and with the firefighters union leadership and with Walk Bike Berkeley to establish the state's first street trauma prevention program at Berkeley Fire. I know, right? So, welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Naila, and thank you, Vice Chair Falcone and Madeline, for those inspirational presentations. I'm going to talk about street trauma prevention, Vision Zero, and the fire service. And the point of this presentation is going to really be to try to shed some light on this relationship between the fire service and Vision Zero and other sort of street safety efforts. And I would characterize that relationship sort of looking at the evidence as uneasy, tense, and sometimes difficult and confusing. And I'm going to frame that relationship as a paradox, that where firefighters and fire paramedics are out in the community helping people every day, day and night, and they're out under some of the hardest conditions and often seeing trauma up front. And on the one hand, and on the other hand, we often find the fire department opposing street safety prevention measures like Vision Zero. Sometimes the fire department can come in as a formidable opponent, and you can be years into a project and the fire department can come into the process and say to decision makers, this is a problem for our emergency response operations. And that's sort of like hard to respond to as a decision maker, as a policy maker. And so I want to reframe that discussion around, in a sort of, in a more positive way, around the fire service's a remarkably successful 50-year involvement in fire prevention that has saved thousands of lives, and how we're at a moment where the fire service really is at a pivotal moment where they can shift their orientation to Vision Zero and sort of street trauma prevention and invoke this really remarkable history of prevention and embrace that. Whereas at this point, they're really focused on street trauma response, and the prevention side is often missing. So that's where we are. So I want to start this by just sort of posing this question: what is it that firefighters and paramedics actually do? And you know, we're all familiar with fire apparatus like this. These are usually staffed with 3 or 4 firefighters, a captain, an engineer, and 2 firefighters. And in most municipalities, that's also staffed with a dual-trained firefighter-paramedic. We're all familiar with some of the gigantic campaign fires, as they're called, that firefighters are deployed to across the state and are pulled from local departments into every area of the state to deal with these large wildland and wildland-urban interface fires. And firefighters also deal with their own local fires as well on a regular basis. But the fire service really is about emergency medical services. It's 70–80% of the call volume, in some places higher. The fire service is out there providing basic and advanced life support services, basic being EMTs, emergency medical technician level, and advanced life support provided by paramedics who are doing advanced procedures, intubation, EKG interpretation, IV medications, treating people in the field. A lot of what happens in the first 15 to 20 minutes in the ER happens in the field at the hands of a paramedic in the field or in the back of an ambulance. And that includes street trauma. This is a photo from a cyclist who was struck and pinned under this vehicle. It's on fire to lift the vehicle, extricate this patient, the cyclist, and begin advanced life support procedures in the field. Then treating and transporting people using a mobile intensive care ambulance. A lot going on in the back of an ambulance where patients are treated and hopefully stabilized to some extent. And when it comes to street trauma, the sort of medication of greatest effect is diesel because you need to get to a trauma center. There's very little that we can do in the field for someone who's seriously or critically injured. What they really need, basically, emergency surgery is what it comes down to. So paramedics do the best they can in the field, hand off to a hospital or trauma center where you have definitive treatment. And so that's sort of the essence of the fire and emergency medical services system. So how is this played out in our city, in Berkeley? Looking at average annual injuries, in Berkeley, among vehicle occupants, cyclists, and pedestrians injured in crashes, we looked at the data from 2017 to 2022, and the average number was 694. That included an average of 5 fatalities every year in a city of between 128, 140,000 people, depending on whether the UC Berkeley's in session. So significant burden, public health and public safety burden. Look on the structure fire side, over the period 2010 to 2022, we've had 2 injuries per year in structure fires. So what's going on here? A couple of things. One is far fewer people are exposed to structure fire hazards than they are to traffic hazards, right? Driving, walking, and cycling. So a lot more exposure on the street side. This is also the fact that we have 2 people injured a year in structure fires is also a consequence of 50 years of work that the fire service has been doing on the prevention side. And you can sort of look around a room like this, and there are standards around exits and occupancy and building materials and so forth that have been decades in the making, and that the fire service embraced as a core function of their mission and have saved thousands of lives. So I want to talk about that. But first, given this sort of exposure that firefighters and paramedics have to trauma, looking at those numbers, the 694 calls a year that Berkeley Fire and paramedics are going to, they're taking care of people, they see trauma up close. But fire departments and firefighter local unions are opposing street safety measures like Vision Zero. And why is that? So this is LA, City of LA, this is Local 112 of the International Association of Firefighters. It represents City of LA firefighters. And they took it upon themselves to mount this formidable campaign against Measure HLA in LA, in Los Angeles, right? And the local union funded it, and they went all in, billboards and these kinds of things. We're seeing this, LA, Oakland, San Francisco, New York City, Baltimore, our own city of Berkeley, and others, where either the department and or the union representing firefighters is stepping into these discussions about street safety measures and in opposition, often in opposition. And so what's going on there? And so one thing that's happening is that the fire service is sort of naturally focused on the question of response. It's sort of what they do all day long, and particularly fire paramedics are operating under this sort of mantra of the golden hour, which is the first hour where someone is seriously or critically injured. The time that from that point of impact to the point that they are in at a trauma center in surgery has to be an hour or less. Once you get past an hour, the likelihood of surviving drops dramatically. And ideally, you want it to be a lot shorter than an hour. And so that's the mind frame that you're working on when the call comes in and you're out on the scene taking care of somebody. You're counting the seconds. That's their daily bread and butter. So anything that looks like it might slow down traffic, might be an impediment to traffic and to vehicle speeds, begins to look like an impediment to doing their job. And they feel that job viscerally. So they've come out in opposition to traffic safety measures that would do basically road diets and street calming measures and so forth. The other side of this is that the fire service has also had this long-term engagement with prevention on the fire side. And that started, it's more than 50 years now. 2023 was the 50th anniversary of the release of this critical report called America Burning, which was a report of the National Commission on Fire Prevention and Control. This report highlighted the importance of fire prevention as an essential role of the fire service alongside fire suppression. And the report motivated Congress to pass the Federal Fire Prevention and Control Act of 1974. And so a couple of citations from the report that are sort of illuminating. One said, currently, about 95 cents of every dollar spent on the fire services is used to extinguish fires. Only about 5 cents is spent on efforts to prevent fires from starting. Much more energy and funds need to be devoted to fire prevention, which could yield huge payoffs in lives and property saved. And then they said, the commission recommends that all local governmental units in the United States have in force an adequate building code and fire prevention code or adopt whatever they lack, right? And so that was sort of a watershed moment for the fire service. They had, up to this point, basically been having this pretty passive approach. The alarm went off, they went out and they fought fires. And that was their engagement with structure fires. After this report, the report called on fire departments to build a comprehensive approach to fire prevention and life safety. And so what was originally sort of in this top box, which was fire suppression, and that was the whole mission, over the decades following that report, what we've seen has been the development, the emergence of paramedic services, advanced life support, a robust fire prevention bureau, fire safety education, identifying high hazard structures, sort of target hazards, regional coordination and mutual aid systems, collecting data, and community relations. All of those have grown up in the subsequent decades to great effect. And what I'm arguing here is that the fire service can and should be adopting this same model when it comes to street trauma. Street trauma is now the driving sort of public safety problem. Thank you. Yes. And you look at the numbers, right? I mean, in our little city of Berkeley, 694 people being injured on our streets every year from street trauma, right? And so if government is about allocating resources to pressing problems, we know it's pretty obvious. So what happened after this, this is U.S. civilian fire deaths and home fire deaths from 1977 to 2022, 5,000 fewer deaths as a consequence of the fire services embracing fire prevention as part of its core mission. 64% decline over 33 years. Now, we juxtapose that with, this, which we're all familiar with, and this is directly from the Governor's Highway Safety Association. So they didn't set the baseline at 0, they set it at 4,000. So the time series looks a little more dramatic, but we know the trend, 89% increase in US pedestrian fatalities between 2010 and 2022 after a 40% reduction between the 30 years, between 1980 and 2010. So, we have a I would see this as a public safety or a public health emergency, all right? Thank you, yeah. So my argument here is that starting now, fire agencies can and should apply the lessons of fire prevention to street trauma prevention. And in thinking about that, so I'm going to lay out a couple of principles here. Because this involves working with the fire service and the firefighters union, firefighters union leadership. The first principle is that quick response and hospital return times are essential to saving lives. That's the bread and butter of the contemporary fire service. That's the way they think about it. And it's a true fact. And my wife is here and our family is intact as a consequence of Berkeley Fire's expertise on this. She was that cyclist pinned under that car, yeah, and they got on the scene within 2 minutes. They lifted the car, extricated her, began resuscitation, and were en route to Highland Trauma Center in 4 minutes. And and the trauma surgeon said she had 5 minutes to live. Right, she would have arrested. She was exsanguinating. So they saved her life, hands down. So I'm a big proponent, and I went on 10,000, literally more than 10,000 911 calls. The response times matter. So that has to be front and center. The second principle, however, is that street trauma can be prevented through well-recognized engineering controls and other design strategies that we're all familiar with in this room. Yeah, and doing so, is obviously taking better care of people. It's also taking better care of firefighters and firefighter paramedics with their long-term mental health and post-traumatic stress injuries that are kind of endemic in this workforce. And yet, even as the fire service has embraced prevention in a real way for decades on the fire side, this is still new. This is a new and can feel threatening, okay? Because we're reducing street sizes, we're putting in traffic controls and so forth. So in 2024, the city of Berkeley sort of looking at this problem and working with Berkeley Fire Chief Dave Sprague and Local 1227 of the International Association of Firefighters that represents Berkeley firefighters, Walk Bike Berkeley, and the Fire Commission over the course of a year really put together the case for the fire department to, in Berkeley, embrace a street trauma prevention orientation, essentially, alongside their response function. And the mission, as the city council laid out, was for Berkeley Fire to engage consistently and constructively in the city's Vision Zero planning and implementation process, collaborate with other city departments as well as the fire marshal to advance Vision Zero and other policies, and build an evidence-based approach to balancing street trauma response and prevention. That city council approved this unanimously and funded a full-time position at Berkeley Fire. I'm happy to say she's actually here today. Thank you, Rania. Thank you. our Berkeley's Street Trauma Prevention Manager based at Berkeley Fire. So I want to just conclude with some sort of closing comments that the fire service is naturally focused on response times. That's the entry point in your discussion. Secondly, quick response times alone are not enough. It is completely within the fire service's jurisdiction to play a role in building a genuinely safer city, not just responding to the incidents and the collisions after they occur. And the history in fire prevention sort of speaks to that. Third, the fire service should be involved in trauma prevention. There's no reason they cannot have a real role there and a constructive, positive presence. This is consistent with its remarkable legacy of fire prevention. Street trauma response and prevention are complementary. And we often see, and it's true also in Berkeley as well, that these are sometimes placed in opposition, right? They are not. They are complementary in so many ways. And the bottom line being here that the fire service and Vision Zero are or should be natural allies, okay, for all these reasons that I'm trying to lay out. And so thank you. And so I'd like to finish with that. And then these are just a few articles that sort of try to get at this relationship and the sort of tension between the fire service and Vision Zero and street safety advocates, and how we can build that alliance with the idea that the fire service, they have a lot to gain from preventing street trauma in so many ways, not only wear and tear on themselves and their call volume, but really their long-term mental health. And they can be, I think, a formidable ally with street safety advocates if we can approach the fire service and the firefighters union in a way that they understand on the ground that they sort of operate under. So that's where I'd like to end. And thank you very much for your attention today. Yeah.
So, Mike, I have to be honest with you. I'm flabbergasted, blown away. Anybody else? I saw you guys taking pictures. I mean, the intersection of the fire department and active transportation truly blew my mind. And then the drama, your wife, I mean, the whole thing. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I'm sure you're gonna have a lot of questions afterwards. I have a bunch for you as well. Next panelist is going to be Logan. So Logan is coming up to represent Kern County. The person we originally had for the presentation wasn't able to make it. So I don't have good things to say about Logan except for this jacket is really cool and he gave a good handshake. So Logan, please introduce yourself. Thank you. It's a good jacket with the logo.
Wow. I've been sitting here these past 2 days looking at all the speakers. I'm like, that must be a lot of pressure to go up and speak in front of all these people with a camera. I was like, oh, I'll never have to do that. And yesterday, I got asked to do it, so here we are. So my name's Logan. I'm with the Kern County Public Works Department. I'm in our advanced planning unit under our transportation division. I'm here with my colleague, Julio. Julio, raise your hand. We are two of the 3 grant writers for the county, and we go after all sorts of grants, specifically the ATP grant. And here I'm going to talk about how we engage with the community in the ATP grant. But before I get started, I would really like to just talk a little bit how I got here. All of my life, I've always just wanted to help people, whether I was having a coffee shop and being a barista, or going to school for an engineering degree, whatever it may be. I've always had the heart to help people, and if I'm being honest, I am new to this position, not new to the county, and seeing the work that these types of grants do is incredibly powerful. I mean, people take for granted what the sidewalks and safe streets are for everyone. I might have kicked something. And when I was 13 years old, we had actually an ATP grant come in front of our house and put in sidewalk, and we never had sidewalk in front of our house. And the joke is, though, the county was just destroying stuff to destroy stuff to make work, whatever it may be. But we got a sidewalk, and I have seen so much safety in my neighborhood, and looking at these grants, I know that the work that what we go after is super important to the community. Sorry, I actually just broke it. Okay, so please bear with me. That's good. So, as everyone knows, COVID was a big deal in how we communicate and how we share information with each other. For Kern County, we never really used Teams or Zoom or anything like that. It was always paper documents, memorandums back and forth between departments. And so when COVID happened, we had to really innovate on how we communicated with the public and find out what they really wanted from us. So a lot of what we did was we tried to bridge the gap with virtual and hybrid. Once COVID restrictions lifted, we would host in person at local community gathering places as well as online through Zoom and Teams. And we use a lot of different tools such as online interactive maps. We have our own website, walkkern.com, where members of the public can see what type of project we're doing and give their input and have a direct line of communication with us. We really wanted to engage and be part of people's lives and show what local government can do. And so we really tried to blend the tech with the in-person collaboration with people. So one of the big things that I have learned from this job and through these grants that Public Works applies for is you really have to have a compassion for people. And my boss told me not to give away any secrets of how we do our projects, but really she is the big secret. She has such a big heart, and they are able to meet people where they are at, and she constantly inspires me to be not only a better person, a better worker, a better writer, but to see people where they're at, especially in disenfranchised locations. I don't know how many people here have been through Kern County or stopped in Bakersfield or anything like that, but it's a big farm and oil town. So there's a lot of areas that don't have curb gutter sidewalk or any safety improvements really. And so we really want to meet people in the community and find out what they would like. So we have a lot of different partners in the community that we go to. We have safety coalitions, we have community advocates, we have nonprofits, and we really try to take their messaging and apply what they truly want into the grant and tailor, I don't want to say demands, but their concerns into the project scope. Like I said, we have a Walk Kern website where people can see a visual story map. I believe this project, which is also on display out there, we have a side-by-side comparison of what was before and after that people can see, which is really cool. And we really just want to close the loop and show how the community had a hand in the project. It's not just the planners or the engineers or the managers or the director. It's really how the community got active with the project. So I've always been told in these 7 months that I've been a part of this grant division of our Public Works Department, we need to reach out early, reach out often. I have given out so many business cards to people in our community that I have to order new boxes constantly. People are always calling me about stuff, whether it's curb gutter sidewalk, safer streets, crosswalks, intersections. We try to work that into our database and how we can have those decisions or those concerns brought up in the next grant cycles. So our department has a really good community outreach team, and we honestly couldn't do anything without them. So, for example, we have a really big county fair, and we have our community outreach team go and give all of the information of what Public Works is. Our Public Works, unfortunately, has the rap of being just the trash people, and we're so much more than that. So when we go for these grants, again, we have different types of community events that we set up, and we try to bring food to the table because everyone loves food, and that's how you get people to engage. We really just want to share the scope of what the grant is offering and bring everything together. And I'm stumbling over my words up here. This is very interesting. But as I've been saying, our department, we want to put ourselves out there with our community because when something goes wrong on the road, it's always the Public Works Department, and we want to address those concerns through whatever means we have, whether that's our local fund or ATP grant. We always strive to keep people's concerns in the forefront of our mission statement. And again, this is one of our, this is an example of a poster board that we had for Walk Kern. And it's our website that just gives us a play-by-play of what the grant entailed, what the outreach was, and all the efforts and community engagement that had to happen to make this grant go through. So if there's anything that you take away besides me just mumbling on, it's just make sure that the community feels heard. I mean, as someone who has always just wanted to help people and seeing the difference that a sidewalk can make or a cul-de-sac for a dangerous intersection along an arterial road, whatever it may be, there are ways that we can get the community involved and have them help design what they truly want. As many other speakers have said this entire symposium, it's without the community, we couldn't do anything right. So I'd also like to thank all the Caltrans people that we work with. They are so generous and always having trainings and getting people up to speed, and it's just a really good place to work. And I'm so happy of the work that not only everyone in this room does, but what Kern County does for its citizens. And I'm going to conclude there before I just keep rambling on and get a text message from my boss saying to knock it off, so. Yeah.
I know. I got you. So we started not knowing anything about Logan and left knowing that we have a passionate person in Kern County that is going to steadfast engage communities. Sadly, we don't have time for Q&A or any of the questions. I want to share the questions that we were going to ask so that you all can mull over them yourselves, right? And potentially ask them in the hallways afterwards, which I think one thing we're curious about and we wanted to kind of expand on is in the changing times, we had COVID, we've had so many things happen in the past years that have completely shifted the way that we're thinking about engagement. And that's also provided a lot of innovations. So we're hoping to hear just what are some of those innovations, what are the opportunities that even in this really complicated, really confusing, and really difficult time, what are some of the innovations that we've been able to bring? Another question we wanted to ask was about what are some of the tried and true engagement techniques? Just a quick aside, recently I engaged in a phone tree with a whole bunch of senior citizens. We were able to get like 200 people called in a matter of minutes. What are those tried and true engagement techniques? What's the phone tree, right? What are some of those techniques that we want to make sure, as we're talking about innovation, we don't lose the recipes? And the last question we had for this panel was going to be around how do we bring in more partners? As you've heard, all of these panelists have displayed this steadfastness. We're just going to keep trying. We're going to keep bringing people in. We're going to keep trying different methods to engage. We're going to pivot. We're going to be on our feet. When our boss calls us the day before, we're going to give the presentation. We're just going to just keep going, jump in where we can. And so how do we bring people along on that journey? That was the last question that we were going to ask. I feel deeply inspired by this panel, really excited to know that there's folks across the state doing great engagement work. And from that, okay, I'm just gonna try and return the favor. I haven't practiced this. And next I'm gonna bring up Michael. Yeah. Michael Theodore Hutnick.
Great, thank you, everyone. I am going to invite the four of you who aren't going to be doing closing remarks to make way for our closing remarks speakers. So, CTC Vice Chair Falcone gets to stay here, and we get to re-welcome up CTC Commissioner Adonia Lugo. And I'll hold for a second because we have two special guests. Very much. All right, so please help me welcome to the stage newly minted Director of Caltrans, Dina El-Tawasi. And last but not least, we have CalSTA, or California State Transportation Agency Secretary Tokes Omishakin. And taking the mic first, Vice Chair Falcone for closing remarks.
Okay, hello again. 3 times a charm up here. Wow, what an incredible 2 days, yes? Oh yeah, okay. Well, on behalf of the California Transportation Commission, thank you to each speaker, moderator, and workshop leader for your incredibly insightful sessions. I also want to give a heartfelt thank you to all of you, the attendees, for making the 2025 ATP Symposium such a success. And a special thanks, heartfelt thanks, I should say, to Commission, Caltrans, and UC Davis staff. Wow, what an organization. You guys just ran this thing like a well-oiled machine. Well done. Your work is deeply appreciated, and I know that we want to do this every year, but we'll be talking about that. It is a lot of work to put something like this together, and just huge kudos to staff for putting this together. Reflecting on the last 2 days, we heard important discussions and stories from advocates, community leaders, and local agencies on leveraging the active transportation program to shift transportation culture. Conversations and the connections made at this event will influence how Californians approach issues such as climate change and resiliency, how we integrate emerging technologies, how we engage with youth, older adults, historically underinvested communities, and rural areas. But the work doesn't stop here. We must continue to prioritize California's diverse communities, multimodal safety, and engage our most vulnerable community members as we plan active transportation improvements. Remember, putting a human face to what we do, right? We need cross-agency partnerships to complete transformative networks. So on behalf of the California Transportation Commission, thank you for your passion, your partnership, and your dedication. Thank you for your participation. Next, we will hear closing remarks from my colleague, California Transportation Commissioner, Dr. Adonia Lugo.
Thank you, Vice Chair Falcone. So good afternoon, everyone. I am going to be reading remarks that were prepared for our fearless Executive Director, Tanisha Taylor. Tanisha is not here, and I would not deign to try and pretend to be Tanisha. I do not have her gravitas, but I agree with these statements that I am about to read. I hope you all found these last 2 days valuable listening to the speakers and participating in the plenary and breakout sessions. As we close the 2025 ATP Symposium, I want to express deep gratitude to everyone who participated in this event. Thank you to all the speakers, presenters, and moderators for dedicating their time to share their insights and expertise on active transportation topics. I also want to give a big thank you to the Symposium Planning Committee, which consists of members from the Active Transportation Program Technical Advisory Committee. Are any of the members in the room? Raise their hands, people who are on that TAC. All right, thank you. Our wonderful organizers from Caltrans. Allie, raise your hand. Others? Thank you. Our amazing CTC staff, definitely our active transportation folks, but anybody from CTC who has lasted this long, raise your hand. We can recognize you. All right, thank you, staff. And of course, the UC Davis staff with ATRC. Thank you so much. Over the past 2 days, we've heard powerful examples of community-driven solutions, shared challenges, and explored opportunities to expand the reach and impact of active transportation projects. The work we do is not easy. It requires persistence, creativity, listening, and acting on what we hear, especially from those voices that have historically been left out of transportation planning. But this symposium reinforces that we are not doing it alone. We are part of a strong, growing community that spans California, one that values people, equity, and sustainability. The Active Transportation Program needs more consistent funding to address the backlog of projects that remain unfunded. The oversubscribed nature of the program and the benefits the program is delivering across the state demonstrate the need for investment in active transportation. With that said, I'd like to remind everyone that the guidelines development for the 2027 ATP Cycle 8 is currently underway. ATP staff continues their extensive engagement efforts by providing guidelines workshops, program education workshops, site visits, and debriefs of past applications. Seriously, there is no wrong question. You can bring any question related to this to the ATP staff. Workshops and technical assistance will be provided through early March 2026. Please reach out to the Commission ATP staff to schedule an engagement activity. And don't forget that the Cycle 8 call for projects will be released March 19th, 2026, and applications will be due on June 22nd, 2026. The California Transportation Commission remains committed to ensuring the active transportation program continues to evolve to meet California's changing needs. Thank you again to everyone here today. Safe travels home, and we look forward to seeing the impact of your work in the months and years ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I'm Dina Al-Tawansi, Director of Caltrans. It's so wonderful to be here with all of you to help close out this year's California Active Transportation Program Symposium. I want to start by echoing all Commissioner Logo's thanks. Thank you to our California Transportation Commission, to the Active Transportation Resource Center, and everyone who made this event possible. We all know it takes a lot to put an event like this together. I also want to thank all of you who've attended and participated over these past couple of days. Moments like these, when we bring together the people that create our transportation future, are the essential building blocks for safe and connected transportation system. From planners and engineers to public health officials, advocates, and local leaders, you represent the front line of California's transportation future. Creating a truly multimodal system, one that serves everyone's safety and reliability, takes teamwork and trust among all of us. California's goal is to eliminate roadway fatalities and serious injuries by 2050. At Caltrans, this goal is at the heart of everything that we do. From our statewide plans, to every policy change that we're making, to every project that we fund. This is truly, the Vision Zero is at the heart of everything that we are doing. A central focus of that goal is to help local communities fund the projects that protect our most vulnerable road users. Creating communities where walking, biking, taking transit are safe travel options for everyone. The Active Transportation Program is one of the clearest examples of what the partnership can achieve. And truly, a lot of people talked about partnership. We cannot do this without all of you. Your input is so invaluable. So thank you for being here. Since its launch, more than 1,200 projects have moved forward through the program, spanning everything from safe routes to school to major regional connections. Together, these projects represent more than $7 billion in total investment and involve more than 250 partners, including local government, tribal nations, school districts, and transportation planning organizations. People working together across all these organizations, jurisdictions, and our communities, it's really what brings those projects to life. Caltrans' role is to be a true partner to the Active Transportation Program, and I really mean that very sincerely. That's why Caltrans has a dedicated Active Transportation Program coordinator within every one of our districts to help our local agencies navigate funding and move projects from vision to reality. These coordinators are helping to ensure that California's investment in active transportation is impactful at both the state and the local level. We also know that partners require active engagement to keep the communication always open and have shared accountability among ourselves and to build trust over time. As we look ahead, Caltrans remains very committed to forge new partnerships to strengthen the existing ones with local government, with policymakers, and with each and every one of you. So as the symposium comes to a close, I want to thank you for the energy and the dedication that you bring to the work that we're doing here year after year. Your work makes a difference. Every project, every partnership, every mile of safer roadways and trails. Together, our work is creating the kind of California that we really, truly all want to live in. That's connected and safe for everyone. Thank you again for being here, and thank you for your continued commitment. I learned a long time ago you always have your boss have the last word, so I'm going to call my boss up. Help me invite Secretary Amashakan, our Secretary for CASTA.
A very good evening, everybody. Good afternoon. So I'm standing in between you and traffic jam on I-80. So you don't have to worry about trying to get out of here on time. You're going to be sitting in traffic anyway, unless you biked here or walked here. Look, I am thrilled to get a chance to spend a little bit of time with you. I was being told just now by our Deputy Secretary for Communications that even when I get done with the presentation, I can't take questions, but I still am going to take questions because they're telling me time is limited. Part of the reason why I'm so thrilled to join you is because I know the work that you're doing, all of you. I know how much it matters. The leaders that you just heard from, our CTC commissioners and vice chair, and our Caltrans director, Naila is here. This is very, very meaningful work. It is making a difference in communities. And I know firsthand how it's doing just that. Some of you may know about my career. I started off, one of my first jobs was 24 years ago, roughly, as bike ped coordinator for the city of Nashville, Tennessee. And when I was in that role, I remember walking into meetings at Public Works in the city, and they would literally laugh at me. They would say, you know, why did the mayor decide to create this position again? Like, this is one of the most irrelevant jobs in the city. And I came in day after day, focused on what I worked for the planning department, focused on what I'd been called to do in that responsibility and make a difference for the city of Nashville. If you know anything about Nashville today, it's remarkably different than it was a couple of decades ago. One of the more walkable and bikeable cities in the country. So the work that you're doing, if there's any question in your mind, CTC, Caltrans, here at Davis, you're from Kern County or anywhere else in the state, stick with it. Stick with it. You're making a difference for people and changing people's lives. So the information I want to briefly share with you, I want to start off with a challenge to all of you. I want to start off with a challenge. If you've never heard of this book, take a picture of this, write it down. The Death and Life of Great American Cities by a lady named Jane Jacobs. When I was in grad school 26 years ago, roughly. This is one of the first books that I read that changed my outlook on the importance of how to build a city, how to build a community. And one of the main things that she highlights and talks about extensively in this book, Jane Jacobs, and by the way, at the bottom there you can barely read it, but the New York Times said, or New York Times book review said, probably one of the most important works in town planning, in the history of town planning work, city planning work, in the history. So dating back a couple of hundred years. By the way, Jane Jacobs never went to planning school, never went to engineering school, architecture school, just a care for the community. She married an architect, I'll give her that. So that probably had a little bit of influence, and it completely changed her outlook just based on her experience in cities and communities. So the challenge for you is how to think about the work that you're doing and focus on doing that work by thinking about people. Not delivering the infrastructure itself alone, but the people you're delivering it for. That's the transition that I've been trying to make in support to Governor Newsom and this state, the people of this state, for the last 6 years, working with people like Director Otawanzi. Shift the conversation from the infrastructure itself to the people that it's about. That's what our job is. If you read this particular paragraph from the book, it probably is offensive to some of you. But this is the truth here. You know, building the sidewalk itself is nothing. We get so enamored by, we got to deliver this project, we got to deliver it on time, da-da-da. True, on budget, on time, all those things matter. What difference is it ultimately going to make for people? That's what we should be thinking about. That's what we should be focused on, not just building the highway or building the street. And she goes on to talk about streets and highways as well as just an abstraction if you don't think about the land use and you don't think about the people that we're building it for. Very, very important challenge to think about. So I mentioned the transition that we've hopefully made on a little bit of my tenure, and our administration has roughly 13 to 14 months left in office. The rhetoric hopefully leading to action has been focused on the core four. The core four, the four most important things I believe we should do in transportation every day to continue to lift up people, not projects, people. Number one, should be safer, should be more equitable, should address the issues around climate in our state, and ultimately, what we all want at the end of the day is to have livable places and economic vitality in those livable places. Nobody wants to live in an area that is struggling economically. Nobody. So how does our work every day, whether you're local government, nonprofit, state government, how does that work every day for me, at least, and many of our 45,000 people that work for our agency, how does it address these four things is the question that I am often asking people. So I'll briefly run through these four and take questions. Safety, number one, and its connection to the ATP work that all of you are doing. I don't need to go into this. We're all believers of Vision Zero. We get it. You know, we're 25 years away. We hopefully will get there where we're not losing people on the transportation system of the state and places around the country. A secretary's policy on road safety, the first ever, surprisingly. Yeah, absolutely. Kind of surprising to say, but nobody in this responsibility has ever done this before. I give a lot of credit to our staff, people like Rachel Carpenter and others who came up with the idea. But not only did I just sign this a week or two ago, but I signed it in connection, and you can look this up. I signed this in partnership with the Secretary of Health for our state. So connecting the built environment and health components, not just the built environment, understanding the fact that safety and the crisis that we have there is very much a health concern and issue as well. So recently did that? Absolutely, yeah. We also started, Director El Tawanzi was with me when we signed this policy. We also started a new program called the State Priority Safety Corridor, where we are tackling specific corridors across the state that have a safety challenge. And we're doing an all-hands-on-deck approach. Every single department that can make a difference in state government, all hands on deck to try to address that safety challenge. So even an organization like the DMV, OTS, so not just Caltrans, CHP, everybody at the table figuring out the highest priority corridors and tackling those. So that's that. And of course, we have organizations like OTS that are leading campaign efforts as well. Equity as a part of the core four. Look, the main message that I want to deliver to you on this is that I think for so many years, and we're still struggling with this, for so many years, our efforts around equity have been very symbolic. I know that's harsh to say, in my opinion. They've been symbolic. What we should be focused on are systemic changes, moving from symbolic to systemic. Changes that, yes, will make a difference for people for years to come. I'm not going to give examples because people get offended when I give some of these examples, but the one I always use, I can't help myself, sorry. The one I always use is if you change the name of a highway from Christopher Columbus Highway to Martin Luther King Boulevard, what does that do for somebody's life? I'm going to leave it at that. I'll get in trouble. I think you catch my drift. Systemic. Symbolism is great. We should do those things. But what are the systemic things that are going to improve people's lives for generations to come? That's what we should be focused on. There are organizations like that the CTC leads, like the Equity Advisory Council, that are making a difference in this area. So I know we're running tight on time, so I'll just keep going here. Climate action. We know the story all too well here. Nearly 50% of the greenhouse gas emissions in California come from the transportation sector. It is by far the leading sector of all the other ones. agriculture, energy production, industries. This by far, the work you all do, transportation is the leading culprit in the environmental challenge in this state. To solve this problem, to solve this issue, we can't only be focused on the automobile side. As important as the automobile side is, we have more registered vehicles in California than any other state has human beings. More than 35 million registered vehicles in our state. So we definitely have a challenge. We are making significant headway when it comes to what we're doing in the EV space. A lot of credit to Governor Newsom and his leadership in this space. Last quarter, a third of the vehicles sold in this, new vehicles sold in the state were EVs. A third. So significant progress. But I think the signs are also very clear to us that in all the documents and research that universities like this have done and others, to win this war against the climate challenge we have, it's going to take a multimodal approach. It's going to take a multimodal approach, without a doubt. It's not just going to be our solutions in making the transition to electric and hydrogen. We're going to have to do more in transit. We're going to have to do more in walking and biking. A balanced approach is what it's going to take ultimately for us to get there. I'm not going to be able to go through the rest of this information, but at the bottom there, the carb scoping plan. If you're wondering where I'm getting this from, I'm not just making this up. The carb scoping plan is a document that outlines how we should be making the right investments to get us to VMT and GHG goals in this state. That document clearly says it's going to take a multimodal approach and has the data to back it up. Finally, of the core four, I stole your graphic. The reason why, give credit to Susan Summercamp, the speechwriter in our office. She thought from an economic prosperity standpoint, this image represents exactly that. It represents that. So to UC Davis team who came up with this, kudos to you. Pretty cool graphic. Here's what I'll say about economic prosperity and the work that you do. The evidence is there, just like in all these other areas. If you build communities that think about people and other modes of transportation outside of cars, they look something like this. They become vibrant. They become vibrant. People want to walk there, bike there, shop there, live there. This is common knowledge to us now. So from an economic prosperity standpoint, the work that you do is critically important. I'm not going to talk about this. Just want a fun picture of us at Caltrans doing a bike ride. I'll close with this. I want the entire room to read this, and then I'll take one or two questions, and then you guys can leave. The entire room, all together, starting 1, 2, 3. Not. Planning for transportation and land use must go hand in hand as two inseparable aspects of the same process. This was said more than 60 years ago. If that picture wasn't there, you would say, oh, an advocate said that, or some city planner said that last week somewhere. This fight that you're fighting, this good fight that you're fighting, don't give up. This is 60, 70 years ago, the President of the United States saying his predecessor, a guy named General Eisenhower, who started us down the path of building highways all across the country, that's a vital job, vital as that job is. But let's not get stuck on that. We can build highways, it's important. And we've built a lot of highways. But let's think beyond that. This guy, by the way, this president started the FTA, what we call the FTA today, the Federal Transit Administration. He saying, think beyond that. Land use and transportation must go hand in hand. If we do that, we win for people. The work that you're doing, it wins for people. That's exactly what we should be doing. So thank you for being able to read. I would love to take any questions. Thank you very much. One or two questions, and then I'll hand it back over to Naila and the team. They're like, why is he doing this? Can't help myself. One or two quick questions.
Is this working? How about now? Okay, hi. We met last week, and I really appreciate you coming to meet us. That was super cool, super inspiring, and this speech was also very inspiring. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about how CalSTA and just the state in general plan to prioritize transit moving forward since SB 960 just passed. We're doing a lot of work at Caltrans kind of behind the scenes, but just what's the vision for transit? Because there is a lot of connections from the first last mile aspect for active transportation and stuff like that. So just curious what you're thinking about that.
And that'll be all, folks. To Director Alturas. No. I'm kidding. I'm not going to do that to you. I'm just kidding. Look, her agency that you work for, Caltrans, so you're questioning your bosses. Look, to me, you can't get to these 4 outcomes, and that's, again, where I'm hoping the message you take away from this. We need to be focused on outcomes. Those 4 outcomes, not the project, but the outcome. We can't get to those 4 outcomes without transit and the work that you all are doing in this space. What she is working on, the director is working on a transit priority policy that should be coming out soon that will answer, hopefully, some of the questions that you have. But also from CalSTA standpoint, the agency standpoint, beyond that, and we've been working with the director and her team, but beyond that, we just wrapped up, everybody should look this up when you get a chance. There's something called the TTTF, 3 T's and an F, the Transit Transformation Task Force, that the state legislature asked me to, and the governor asked me to appoint 25 members, appointed them. Their final report is due next week. They spent the last 2 years developing a report about the future of transit. The main thing that I'm looking to see, beyond things like you asked for my vision, beyond things like how we can be more safe and connected, more readily accessible. Number one thing is how you pay for it. Like, that's where the challenge is how do you pay for the operations of transit in this state? We're making the right capital investments. There's a program called TIRCP that's put nearly $12 billion into transit, nearly half of that since I've been in this responsibility. So we're doing the right things policy-wise. We're coming up with the right capital investments. High-speed rail just got $1 billion guaranteed, moving forward. But it's things like how you pay for the operations, like in other countries, the federal government and state government, they go all out for transit. It's here where we're expecting transit to be a profitable enterprise. It's one of the rare places in the world, developed countries in the world, where we're saying it's not making enough money back for us. That's not what other countries do. If you go to China, for example, and I know that's probably not the best of comparisons, they pay for it. They pay for it. They've built 23,000 miles. Hear me out here. 23,000 miles of high-speed rail since 2008, when we started. 23,000. So they just take the state money and say, look, we know infrastructure is important. We're going to make these investments in buses and rail and pay for the operations as well. The other things that they do are like, make sure there's the real estate around the stations. The real estate around the stations are profitable. So, the commercial and, residential uses they're TODs, if you will, those are profitable for them. So they use some of that money, but for the most part, it's the government saying, this is critical to people's livelihood, and make those investments. So look out for TTTF and the transit policy. Stop questioning your bosses. Last question, I'll let you guys go.
Hi, Mitch Weiss, Corey Consulting. I appreciate you telling the story of the challenge that you had in Tennessee. Many of us experienced that dealing at the local level with getting the policies that are enacted at the level of everybody sitting up there down at the local level. And one of the things I was chatting about with a couple of my colleagues at a break earlier is this idea that, coming up with some kind of academy for Caltrans engineers that focuses on getting them out, walking and biking on some of these facilities. It occurs to me this might be something that could be supported through the Active Transportation Resource Center, and maybe if it had your support, something we might be able to get off the ground to get people to, everybody has experience driving, almost everybody in California, driving to work, driving wherever they go. Some people use transit, some people bike and walk, but not all the people who are making the decisions on the projects, on the ground. So what are your thoughts on that?
There's a lady named Ali Dewar that's behind you.
She helps control the money, but how do we make it work?
Well, I will just say, I will, of course, want to hear from the director, but in partnership with UC Davis, the Active Transportation Resource Center will now have free introduction to planning and design courses available to all of you in the room, also to our staff at Caltrans. So thank you, UC Davis. And at the ATRC, we're also starting walk and bike audit training. So I think that's just another example, but I don't want to steal your shine. Director, go ahead.
No, thank you, Ali, for that. I just want to add to what Ali just said also, that one of the things that we used to do actually in our planning academy was do exactly what you were suggesting, Mitch. We used to have our planners go bike and walk certain areas wherever the academy was happening, just to to be able to relate to the conditions out there and what we're really doing in terms of the design. That was a while back. I don't know if it's still happening after the pandemic, but it's something definitely that we can look into. For the engineers, definitely, yes. So just to build on that, yesterday we had our town hall meeting, and I was just talking about that. It's like when you're designing, when you're planning, are you thinking of the end user? Are you thinking of the folks that are going to be actually out there walking, biking, and using transit, as well as our own folks that are going to be maintaining and operating it? But yeah, thank you for that.
Very well said. Former Director Weiss, good question. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
So you should only be leaving if you didn't turn in a bingo card, because now we're going to give away the fabulous prize to the person whose name, hopefully everybody wrote their name on these, that I pull out of this basket. Lola Torney must be present to win. You are here. Oh my goodness. Congratulations. So last thing before you guys escape, we're going to put a QR code up here. It'll also be sent out next week, but please take a shot of it now because next week everything won't be as fresh in your mind. We would love to hear your feedback. For example, yesterday's lunch line was really, really long, and we made an adjustment, and quick build. We quick built the lunch line in half. Perfect. So we got some instant feedback and we're able to pivot, so the feedback that you give us will make the next symposium better. Thank you everyone for your time and attention. Have a wonderful evening.